Well, good morning. This is Mrs. McPherson, and I wanted to share with you some information about Reading Olympics this year. If you've heard about Reading Olympics in the past, we're going to do something a little bit different this year. Instead of signing up right away, you're going to actually get to know some of the books and do some reading documentation with me before you sign up. So your substitute has given you a piece of paper with two sides. Make sure you put your name on both. And this first part is a lot of information for your parents. So we'll actually be reading a book and working on some documentation. And then after you have done three books, one with me and two on your own, but I can guide you through that, then you're going to decide if you want to sign up for Reading Olympics. It also has some information about the fact that it doesn't add any additional homework. Anytime that you're reading at home for Reading Olympics counts as the reading that part of your homework where you'd be reading. And in class, when you can read books, during language arts time, you can also be reading Reading Olympics there too. So the back of this sheet of paper, and make sure you've got your name on the front and the back. The back gives a lot of information. Every single one of these books, we will have three physical copies or more physical copies of the books in the library. They're not available yet, but I will have them out soon. The chart shows you the title, the author. It tells you what kind of genre it is. So this one's a mystery or realistic fiction, nonfiction, science fiction. And then the next column shows you the format, whether it's a chapter book, a picture book, a graphic novel, etc. It'll give you the approximate reading level. Now, sometimes it's off a little bit, for a picture book or graphic novel, this says 2.4, but it's really not a second grade reading level. Tells you how many pages. And then the ones that are shaded, and I know it's not shaded on the copy that you were given, but there are three books that count as two. Anybody seen Frenchie is one of them, Dog Squad is another. And if I go down to Framed, A Toast Mystery is also. There's a book towards the very bottom that looks like it should be A Wrinkle in Time, but that is simply because it has so many pictures that it is not counted as double. So then you have this section of columns. We have a ton of these books available as an ebook in Sora. You can read those from your computer in your classroom. The last two columns, Hoopla and Libby, you must have one of those purple library cards that you get from the public library. And then you can check these out. I love listening to audiobooks, and a lot of the ones through Libby and Hoopla are both in an audiobook format and in an ebook format. So you could be cleaning your room on a weekend and listening to some of your Reading Olympics books. There really are a ton of them available. This bottom part is for your parents, letting them know a little bit more about that. So make sure this paper gets in a safe place when you get back to your classroom. Now, my Friday kids didn't get to see the book covers last week since we weren't at school, but my other grades or my other classes should have. So here's two possible covers for the 100-Year-Old Secret, and I have them in the same order that they're on your paper too. Anybody here seen Frenchie? This is realistic fiction. We have a nonfiction, The Boo Boos That Changed the World, which is honestly how they invented Band-Aids. Who would have thought? The City of Embers, one of our graphic novels, and that's science fiction. Dog Squad is really funny, and this is the same author that wrote Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library. The Dragon in the Sock Drawer is fantasy fiction. The Empty Pot is an older title, so many of you may have read it at some point. It is a picture book folk tale. So when you're thinking about what to read next, this one might be good to read towards the end of the time before the competition, closer to March, so that it'll be fresh in your mind. Framed is a mystery. It's really good. They weave in all sorts of stuff in there, and we have the next couple of books in the series as well. Fuzzy Mud is science fiction, and Lewis Sacker is the author of Sideways Stories at Wayside School and Holes, just a bunch of other books. I Survived. This is one I hadn't read before, The Great Alaska Earthquake of 1964. I love how these start off right in the thick of the crisis, whatever's happening. The Key to Extraordinary is fantasy fiction. So if you like fantasy and magic kind of stuff, I think you'll really enjoy that one. Koala Hospital's nonfiction. This one once makes me want to go to Australia and cuddle koala bears. The Last Fifth Grade of Emerson Elementary is similar to The One Thing You'd Save in that each little chunk is a different student talking, and they're trying to deal with the fact that they might be the very last fifth grade going to their school. The Leaf Detective is a biography of Margaret Lohman, and I learned a ton about her and her discoveries in the rainforest. The Legend of Gravity is a tall tale, but it is a modern tall tale centered around basketball. Otter is by Catherine Applegate, and she is the author of The One and Only Ivan and all of those fabulous books. And this one is also a novel in verse. The Remembering Day is also called in Spanish El Dia Los Muertos. Now, I'm not a Spanish speaker, so I may have just butchered that, but hopefully I didn't do it too badly. Shadows at Jamestown is part of the Virginia Mysteries. And if you've read any of these before, you know that you don't have to read them in order. So it doesn't matter that this is book 6, you can jump into the thick of things. Six Dots is a biography of Louis Braille, and he is the inventor of the Braille alphabet. And he was actually blind himself. I learned a lot in this one too. Squirrel in the House is a really funny, fast read. Obviously, a squirrel gets into the house and all sorts of chaos ensues. Squished is by the same author as Allergic. It is a graphic novel, and if you liked her book Allergic, you will probably love Squished. Steamboat School is historical fiction, but it is based on true events. So there were little bits and pieces the author had to make up because they weren't able to find the information. So that's why it goes into the fiction instead of just a nonfiction book. The Terrible Two is really funny. Jory John is the author of The Good Egg, The Bad Seed, all of those books. And Mac Barnett has written a ton of books too, usually picture books. And these two joined up to come up with a series of chapter books. Thank You, Dr. Salk is a biography of the scientist who invented the polio vaccine. And polio was a very dangerous disease that most of you have probably never heard of because we have the vaccination and you were all vaccinated at birth. So we don't have to worry about that anymore. 30 Minutes Over Oregon. This is nonfiction, and it talks about a Japanese pilot in World War II dropping bombs on the United States, and then they follow up with him and with some of the people in the town during modern times as well. Ways to Make Sunshine. This is book 1 in a series, and I just love this story. It is realistic fiction, and it just puts a smile on your face. Wedgie and Gizmo is really funny, as you could probably tell just from the cover. And then we have a couple of Who Is. We have Cristiano Ronaldo, the soccer player, and Dolly Parton, the singer. And finally, we have A Wrinkle in Time, and this is the graphic novel adaptation of that book as well. Alrighty, so you are going to, if you're back in your classroom at some point, be able to put these books on hold, even though you can't quite check them out now, but definitely also tell your parents about this and let them read the letter that's on the back so they'll know that we're signing up a little bit differently this year. All right, happy reading.